It's October 27th, 2011, Game 6 of the World Series at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, Missouri. With the Cardinals and Rangers tied at 9 in the 11th, David Freese steps to the dish. If the Rangers can close it out here in St. Louis, they'll win their first World Series in franchise history. The Cardinals are just trying to push it to a 7th game. This game will go down as one of the greatest World Series games of all time. But how did these teams get here? What are we doing in the 11th inning? And who is David Freese? For that, we must rewind. These two teams took very different paths to the World Series. Historically, the Texas Rangers franchise has been very bad. Heading into their 2010 season, the Rangers stood alone as the only MLB team to never win a postseason series. In their entire 50-year history, dating back all the way to the days of the Washington Senators, this team has never won a single playoff series. This all changed in 2010 when they won the AL West and battled their way to their first World Series appearance ever, which they lost in 5 games to the Giants. After getting their first taste of winning, the Rangers were primed to take the AL pennant again, and in 2011 they did, cruising through the AL playoffs with ease. After decades of waiting, the Rangers were back in the World Series and ready to finally win it all. The Cardinals had a much different path to the Fall Classic. At the beginning of August, the Redbirds sat just 2.5 games back of the NL Central leading Brewers. But after a rough couple of weeks that saw 2 series losses to the Brewers and a sweep at home to the Dodgers, the Cardinals found themselves 10.5 games out of a wildcard spot. With a month left in the season, MLB's playoff predictor put the Cardinals' odds at just 1.3%. When asked about his team's struggles, Cardinals manager Tony La Russa said, "I guarantee that the team you have seen the past few weeks is not the team we have, and I believe you will start to see our team tomorrow." La Russa wasn't kidding. From the end of August and into September, St. Louis caught fire, playing their best baseball all year, closing out the month of August and moving into September. The Cardinals continued to win throughout September, going 18-8 in the month, including a crucial 3-game sweep of the wild-card leading Atlanta Braves. With 1 series left in the season, the Cardinals found themselves just 1 game out of a wild-card spot. The Cardinals traveled to Houston to play a terrible Astros team, while the Braves had to host the NL East champion Phillies. The Cardinals lost the opener in extra innings, but the Braves also lost, which meant that with just 2 games left in the season, the Cardinals still had a shot. The Cards came back the next night and clobbered the Stros, winning 13-6, while the Braves lost again to the Phillies, putting them in a tie for the wild card with a single game remaining in the 2011 regular season. With a playoff spot on the line, Cardinals ace Chris Carpenter tossed a 2-hit shutout to lead the Cardinals to an 8-0 win to close out the season. With the win in the books, all eyes turned to Turner Field in Atlanta to see how the Braves and Phillies game would end. The Braves and Phillies needed extra innings to decide game number 162. In the top of the 13th, Hunter Pence put the Phils ahead with a clutch infield single, pushing the Braves to the brink of elimination. In the home half, with a runner on first, Braves slugger Freddie Freeman grounded into a 3-6-3 double play to end the season, clinching an improbable wildcard spot for St. Louis. Behind by more than 10 games just a month earlier, the Cardinals found a way to sneak into the postseason at the 11th hour. But once in the playoffs, their path didn't get any easier, as they had to play the 102-win juggernaut, Philadelphia Phillies. Down 2-1 in the best-of-5 series, the Cardinals yet again had to find a way to pull out a miracle, this time against the best team in baseball. In Game 4, St. Louis found inspiration from an unexpected source. In the 5th inning of Game 4, in the middle of Roy Oswalt's windup, a squirrel raced across the field and into the stands. The pitch was called a ball, but Oswalt and manager Charlie Manuel argued unsuccessfully that the pitch should be called off and the count reset. After the game, when asked about the now famous rally squirrel, Manuel said that he would have shot the squirrel if he had his gun on him. Through the power of the squirrel, the Cardinals pulled out wins in games 4 and 5, including another gem by Chris Carpenter, this time a 3-hit shutout, to send them to the NLCS against the Milwaukee Brewers. The Cardinals lost Game 1 9-6 in Milwaukee, but then came back the next night and won Game 2 12-3. After taking 2 of the next 3, the Cardinals had a chance to win the pennant in Miller Park in Game 6. St. Louis put up 9 runs in the first 3 innings and never looked back, winning the game 12-6 and the series 4-2. Which brings us here to the World Series, an unlikely matchup between a team on the verge of ending their 50-year World Series drought and a team that has defied the odds and clawed their way to the Fall Classic. But how did we get here to the 11th inning of Game 6? Well, for that, we have to look back to game number 1. Cardinals ace Chris Carpenter faced off against Rangers ace CJ Wilson. At age 36, Carpenter is pitching in his 14th big league season. He shouldn't be here right now. Like, really, he shouldn't be starting game 1. That should be Cardinals' real ace, Adam Wainwright, pitching in his prime at age 29. Unfortunately for the Cardinals, just weeks into spring training, it was announced that Wainwright would be out for the season with Tommy John surgery. After finishing 3rd in Cy Young voting in 2009 and 2nd just a year before in 2010, the loss of Waino should have set the team back, but adversity is just the MO of this 2011 Cardinals team. And what do you know, Carpenter out-dueled Wilson to take Game 1 for the Cards 3-2. Game 2 was another pitcher's duel, this time between Jaime Garcia and Colby Lewis. Down by 1 in the 9th, the Rangers pulled out a rally to snatch a 2-1 road win, knotting the series at 1 apiece, heading back to Arlington. In Game 3, the Cardinals' bats finally woke up. Held hitless in Games 1 and 2, Albert Pujols came alive in Game 3.
That is hammered into left. Oh my God. That ball is absolutely murdered.
Launching 3 homers for 6 RBIs, leading St. Louis to a 16-7 Game 3 win. After his team gave up 15 hits and 16 runs just the night before, Rangers pitcher Derek Holland commanded Game 4, throwing 8 1/3 scoreless innings, only allowing 2 hits. A Mike Napoli 3-run shot in the 6th put the game away, tying the series back up at 2 games apiece. Tied at 2 in the series, Game 1 starters Carpenter and Wilson faced off again. With neither ace able to get the edge, it came down to a Cardinals bullpen miscommunication, which allowed the right-handed Mike Napoli to hit against the lefty Mark Sepchinski. Napoli came through with a 2-run double and the Rangers won the game, taking the pivotal 3-2 series lead. Which brings us here. 18 runs is a lot for a baseball game, especially considering that the starting pitchers Jaime Garcia and Colby Lewis combined to give up just 1 earned run the last time they face each other in game number 2. So, what happened, guys? Garcia started in the top of the 1st by giving up an RBI single to Josh Hamilton, and then Lewis in the bottom of the 1st gave up a 2-run shot to Lance Berkman. The Rangers tied it in the top of the 3rd on a ground rule double by Ian Kinsler. After 3 innings, giving up just 2 runs on 6 hits, Garcia was done and replaced by Fernando Salas. Get ready to watch some really bad baseball. After an ugly error, Mike Napoli slapped a single down the line to give Texas the lead. Then the Rangers came back on the field and made their own error, which allowed a Yadier Molina groundout to bring the game back even. Not to be topped, the Cardinals came back out in the top of the 5th and committed another error. With Josh Hamilton on first, Michael Young put a double in the gap, and the Rangers retook the lead. Salas' night was done after getting absolutely no help from his defense. Colby Lewis came back out to pitch the 6th, and he gave up an infield single, followed by what should have been a double play to end the inning. But Michael Young fundamentally forgot how to play baseball and committed the game's 4th error in 3 innings. After walking the bases loaded, Lewis's night was done. He was replaced by Alexi Ogando, who immediately walked Yadier Molina on 5 pitches to tie the game. Ogando eventually got out of the inning with the game still tied, but wow, that was some really bad defense and just terrible pitching. There's no way this could get any worse. But Lance Lynn came in and said, "Oh yes it can," and promptly gave up back-to-back home runs to Adrian Beltre and Nelson Cruz on just a cookie of a hanging curveball. The Cardinals gave up another run, and by the end of the 7th, they were trailing by 3, with just 6 outs left in their season. In the bottom of the 8th, an Allen Craig homer cut the deficit to 2, but Rangers relief pitching held them there. In the top of the 9th, manager Tony La Russa sent out the righty reliever Jason Motte. This was a real gamble on La Russa's part, because Motte had been shaky in clutch spots that series. After a save in Game 1, Motte was the losing pitcher in Game number 2, giving up 2 singles to Rangers, who would eventually come around and score the winning runs. But here he was in Game 6, and he pitched a scoreless 9th inning. So on to the bottom of the 9th, and in comes Neftali Feliz. Feliz was fresh off a Rookie of the Year award just a year earlier, and he has been nails in the playoffs, converting every single one of his save appearances. After striking out the leadoff batter, Albert Pujols ripped a double into the gap. Feliz then walked Lance Berkman on 4 pitches. With how cold it was, it's clear that the players are having a tough time with the ball. It's so cold, in fact, that Allen Craig just froze in the batter's box. I mean, that's a pitch right down the middle. And with that, the Rangers are just an out away from winning their first World Series. The only man in their way is David Freese. But who is David Freese? Freese is a local kid. His hometown is just an easy half-hour drive from the ballpark. But his road to the bigs was anything but easy. After graduating high school ranked as the best shortstop in Missouri, Freese was offered a full-ride scholarship to play college ball at Mizzou, which he turned down to be a regular student studying computer science. At the age of 19, David Freese decided to quit baseball. During his freshman summer in 2002, Freese worked as a janitor at his old high school. The story goes that he realized how much he missed the game, so he enrolled at a local community college and joined the baseball team. After a successful season, Freese transferred to play at the University of Southern Alabama, where he starred at third base for the Jaguars. In his senior year, Freese was named onto the Division I All-American team. In 2007, David Freese was drafted in the 9th round by the Padres. A year later, he was traded to the Cardinals. After a successful run through the minors, Freese was called up and started at third for the Cardinals on opening day 2010. And he's played well, batting a notch under 300 in 2011 and even winning NLCS MVP against the Brewers, mashing 3 homers in just 6 games. But tonight in Game 6, Freese has played really badly, going 0 for 3 with a strikeout, and he's had an inexcusable error in the 5th inning that led to a Rangers run. And he has to hit against Neftali Feliz, a reliever who, in his 11 playoff innings pitched this year, has only given up 1 run. That's an ERA of 0.82. Just 10 years after quitting the sport, David Freese has to come through here for the Cardinals in the 9th inning, against the best closer in the playoffs this year, just 1 strike away from winning it all. Okay, here we go. Welcome to a moment in history.
Into right, well hit. Back at the wall. It's off the wall. 1 run scores. Here comes Berkman. Freese has tied it. 7-7. Unbelievable.
Yep, David Freese tied it in the 9th. That's just his 3rd career triple. Unbelievable. And Nelson Cruz almost got it. Really unbelievable. And after a Yadier Molina lineup, we're headed on to extras. Jason Motte came back in the 10th, and after giving up a single to Elvis Andrus, grooved one right down the middle for Josh Hamilton. At this point, barring a major pitching blunder, the Rangers are going to win the World Series. But what is Game 6 if it isn't just a 4-hour parade of poor pitching? With Neftali Feliz knocked out of the game, the Rangers send in Darren Oliver to pitch the bottom of the 10th, and he didn't do a good job. Oliver gave up a single to the first batter, Daniel Descalso, and then a little bloop single to Jon Bois to put the tying run on first base. Kyle Loesch, the Cardinals pitcher, came in and bunted them along to put both runners in scoring position. With Darren Oliver only able to get one out in the 3 batters he faced, Rangers manager Ron Washington turned to his bullpen to put in Scott Feldman. And Feldman didn't pitch so well. The first batter he faced was Ryan Theriot, and he got Theriot to ground out, but a run came home to score. With 2 outs, Washington elected to intentionally walk Albert Pujols to bring Lance Berkman to the plate. Berkman, on a 2-2 count, down to their final strike yet again, lined a base hit into center field to score the tying run to bring us to 9-9. Tied at 9, Scott Feldman finally got out of the inning by getting Alan Craig to ground out, but the damage had been done, and the game was tied yet again. So we headed to the 11th. To pitch the top of the 11th, the Cardinals brought in Jake Westbrook, and he did a pretty good job, only facing 4 batters to get the 3 outs he needed, which brings us to the bottom of the 11th. Tied at 9, David Freese faces Mark Lowe. Lowe started the count by throwing a couple balls, and then a third, which was called a ball, but it probably could have been a strike. The 4th pitch was further outside the zone than the 3rd, but home plate umpire Gary Cederstrom called it in Mark's favor because he was being nice. That lady there, she doesn't like the call. Neither does Yadier Molina. With the count at 3-1, Lowe throws a fastball right down the middle, a home run pitch, and Freese knows it. He just missed it. Now with the count full, we're going to take a minute and look back to the World Series in 1991, game number 6 with Kirby Puckett at the plate. In the announcer's booth is Jack Buck, and as Kirby Puckett launches his game-winning home run to left field, he has the famous call.
Into deep left center from Mitchell, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Which brings us back to tonight. Game number 6 of the 2011 World Series at Busch Stadium. The man in the booth, Joe Buck, Jack's son. On a 3-2 count, Mark Lowe winds and deals to David Freese. Welcome to a moment in history.
Freese hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
Thank you so much for watching. The Cardinals completed the comeback and won game number 7, which is just amazing after being down by more than 10 games in the wild card in August, that they would win the World Series after being down to their final strike 2 times. Game number 6 was just an amazing game. 19 runs. The Cardinals were down by 2 runs in the 9th and 10th inning. They came back both times. Walk-off home run by David Freese. It's just the best of baseball. When researching this, I wasn't sure whether to do the David Freese home run in game number 6 or Rajai Davis's game-tying home run in 2016, game number 7. But I already covered Rajai Davis's home run in a podcast. It's called 108, and I'll put that in the description below if you want to check that out. All right. Thank you very much.